everybody. Welcome to another episode of Politically Depressed. As always, I'm your host, Ayman McAdam. So it's been more than 3 days since the Israelis escalated their aggression on Lebanon, and having killed hundreds only in a single day, they've also driven out and uprooted tens of thousands, if not upwards of 100,000 people from their homes, and many of them are seeking shelter in Beirut. With that, there have been a lot of groups and organizations and grassroots activists that are basically footing the bill of our basically absent government. The government had no plan to shelter these people, to make accessible whatever, all the things. Lebanon is functionally a failed state. And so there have been a lot of these grassroots movements, organizations, and just people who are doing what they can to help these people, to provide shelter, to make sure that they're safe, essentially, and their needs are taken care of. So today, I'm going to dedicate this whole episode to talking about one group that I've been a part of for, I think it's been 4 years now, and it's called Queer Mutual Aid. I helped found it with 2 other comrades. We are about 8 or I think to 10 people. Most of us are in Beirut, and we're all queer feminist organizers who saw the need to not only support in very direct terms people within our community, specifically queer and trans people, but also need to drastically redevelop the very ways in which this work is done, which is why we've focused on mutual aid as a tool and a philosophy. So I'm going to be talking about all of this stuff, about the history of the group, the way we work, the work we are doing now, and the work we've obviously been doing over the last 4 years. If people want to know more, we obviously have a Patreon, and we have one article that I think most of us are comfortable sharing that was written by me and one other comrade. I'll provide obviously the links below. I'm doing this episode firstly because there's such an increase of needs, and we've gotten context from a lot of people who are fleeing from the south who are displaced and so need a place to stay, obviously a safe place, obviously somewhere where it's a bit sustainable and it's not just super temporary. But also, I think the group does so much incredible work, and all the members in it, I love them so much. They in many ways keep me with some sort of attachment to sanity. And I've said this before, one of the biggest achievements for me of the group is that it still exists. To be a grassroots group in Lebanon to last 4 years, honestly, is an achievement. And I think a lot of us kind of know it because, yeah, we've been through some rough times, but we've sort of worked together. Things are still really fucked. And so prioritizing each other's well-being and sort of doing the mutual aid within the group and everything. I don't know, there are a lot of lessons that I think we can share. And I'm going to be doing this episode also as a kind of fundraiser. So, I don't know, I want to fully explain and explore what we're doing and the significance of our work, and hope that, I don't know, not just that you support us or that you share our Patreon and consider becoming a member, but also sharing with your friends and families and comrades. But also, yeah, maybe learn, I don't know. I definitely hear a lot of people asking, what can we do? And especially Lebanese people from abroad. But also this has been a question for years now. And I think mutual aid is something that people can do that can have a real effect and is a sort of part of organizing that's deeply neglected for a lot of reasons. But anyway, okay. So, Queer Mutual Aid Lebanon was formed in June 2020. This is a few months into the October 17 revolution, which started in 2019, and functionally started with a Facebook post. A person I knew, this is just from my perspective, I guess, but essentially one member posted Actually, no, yeah. I'm just going to tell the whole story from my perspective because I'm here and it's me. Basically, one of the most interesting, powerful sort of interventions slash groups slash movements that really took shape in October 17, during the October 17 revolution, was this intersectional feminist movement. It was, they had meetings, they had the best chance, and they would do interventions, and a lot of those same people are some of the only people that I noticed after the protests waned and after things got really shitty. They kept doing the work. And in a lot of ways, the reason that they were so kind of powerful and present is because feminists in Lebanon, for at least a decade, had already been growing and mobilizing and organizing. And so when the revolution started, they were some of the most, like, especially in Beirut, specifically in Beirut, which has its own slew of problems, but I don't know if I'll have time to discuss that here. But anyway, I stand these people so intensely. Like, they became kind of micro celebrities in my kind of naive, young, and I followed a lot of them, and I read a lot of their writings, and I watched all the stuff they did, and I sort of studied their chants and the internationalism of the chants, but also the intersectionality of it all. And a lot of these people had, for a few years before that, if I would go to the main march that I would go to would be International Women's Day. And the International Women's Day march was always such an important place and space for me. But anyway, so when the day came that I saw this Facebook post, I'd already know this person, we met up. And the post was just, does anyone want to do anything in the gay community, like in quotations, because the gay community is definitely a problematic concept, which was part of those early conversations. It ended up being me, them, and one other person. We ended up having like 3 long discussions where we mostly talked about theory, and we talked about what is our criticism of not just the state, not just capitalism and patriarchy, but also of the NGO system. And yeah, we would talk, but we'd also bring in reflections from other people that we've talked to. And one of the people is very close to the trans communities in Lebanon. And a lot of them have a lot of legitimate complaints. And especially when we're talking about poor trans women. There's definitely a class thing going on here. And this is the general critique of NGOs as well. And so we're talking about not just our critiques, but also alternatives. We start discussing mutual aid. Mutual aid was something that I was also interested in for a long time. Only a few months earlier, I wrote 2 articles about mutual aid in Lebanon. I'll also post those articles as well if anyone's interested. I wrote it for The Public Source, which remains one of the most important magazines from Lebanon. I highly recommend it. And yeah, so we get to discussing, and it's kind of burning us out a bit because it was a bit too theoretical, or what we want to do and what we should start doing and whatever. But in retrospect, it was really crucial that we had those early conversations where for a brief period we kind of imagined together. Because only a few months afterwards, on August the 4th, 2020, the port exploded, and killing hundreds, but displacing hundreds of thousands, and injuring thousands. And yeah, that kind of crisis was thrust upon us. A lot of us were there when it happened, and so we had our own stuff to deal with. But then there were just so many other people who lived in those areas who kind of lost everything, may not have been doing all right to begin with. And at that same time, yeah, I don't know how much people know about Lebanon, but starting in late 2019, we start to have this, what's called, the economic collapse. And it's still there. There's hyperinflation, prices are insanely high. The government is kind of just absolutely useless and has not done anything serious. If anything, it's part of the problem. They're the ones that did it. The economic collapse is its own thing. It's horrible. It's so complex and honestly mind-numbing to actually try to dissect all the pieces of it. Anyway, as we're seeing today, and same thing back then, it was ordinary people who responded. quite literally, I remember going into the streets where it was just a flood of people picking up rubble, picking up debris. Just, there were some organizations, but literally I remember entering Jemeze, one of the worst hit areas. It's just this very long street. And the soldiers were just sitting there, soldiers of the Lebanese army, in their convoy, just watching. And I remember seeing a friend of mine, a journalist, screaming at them. And because, yeah, they're just sitting there while people, just ordinary people who have just survived this horrible thing, are forced to foot the bill. Because no one else is going to do it. Because the state is completely in retreat. And, I mean, not fully. They defend each other and protect each other's interests in this very core elite group. But the rest of us are fucked. And basically, we're still in that same place where we're in this, like, where we have this, like, completely inept, shit, absent government. Anyway, so from that, we did a fundraiser. We got a bunch of money. We contacted people that we already knew and offered to support them with medical fees and housing fees. And essentially, that is how the core work sort of started. And that's sort of a lot of the work we've been doing over the last 4 years. It started with a kind of initial, like, emergency one-time support. But here, I guess I'll start integrating why we wanted to do mutual aid, not just, in this kind of theoretical opposition to NGOs and the hierarchy within NGOs, but one of the core complaints and critiques of NGOs is that it kind of replicates this capitalist dynamic of just a sort of transactional relationship. And so here is a needy person. I give them money. They go away. And I did my part because I gave my bit. But that person, obviously, because you've given them a bit of money, but capitalism still exists, the state is still completely, like, depleting any public resources, and the country's in complete collapse. And so what's needed is sustainable support, but also the support that doesn't just aim to, relieve this one-time thing, go off, here's some money, fuck off, but to actually form relationships with people and see how you can help, and also see, discuss with them first what their needs are, and then to just have a discussion about what's possible. And sometimes it's not just money. A lot of the cases actually that we've dealt with in the last, I don't like to talk about them as cases, but one of the biggest problems for the last few years that many people in the queer communities in Lebanon are facing is loneliness, because it can get quite lonely, because a lot of people don't like leaving at night, and so WhatsApp is a huge thing, and those internet kind of relations, and especially for older people. And so, that's something that NGOs don't really focus on, but honestly, that's really important. But yeah, also there is this very dismissiveness. There's also this, like, honestly, one of our biggest problems is how much we know they get paid and how much money they have to do their stuff and the grants they get. And then we get, a call from someone who says, that they called this NGO and they're like, oh, we don't have any money. And it's like, even they know there's so much antagonism between, like, especially poor and working class queer and trans people in Lebanon and the NGOs that claim to, support the LGBTQ plus communities. But it's not the time for that yet. They're also mobilizing. They're doing some good stuff. For us, we knew that we wanted to do something different. And we found that in a lot of the relationships we've made, there is almost like a sigh of relief when we tell them that we're not a group, we're not an organization, we're not an NGO. We're just a group of queer people who are living in this situation as well, who see, the violence of the, collapse of capitalism, of patriarchal, like, backlash kind of bullshit. I don't know. We connect the dots. And through our intersectional analysis, we can see these groups, those marginalized groups, and we can see the violence they're facing. And so in our solidarity, we want to support them. in opposition to these, structures of domination that we are not immune to either. Anyway, so basically the group has grown, as in new members have joined, but we've also developed, our ways of working. We have basically 2 or 3 programs. One is just like emergency relief. If there's someone who approaches us with a need, with a whatever, we first have discussions with them, we get to know them a bit. And yeah, sometimes it is cash assistance. A lot of the times it's also just like connecting people within certain networks, or yeah, like someone else would have something. I mean, I don't know, sometimes it's just an Instagram post and I don't know, someone needs a bag, someone needs medication, someone needs whatever. There's an organization that hands out food parcels, and so we just connect this. Or sometimes it's just this sort of connection stuff. But also we have another program we've been running for like 2 years, which is called the Monthly Sustainable Program, where we basically give direct cash assistance, which usually mostly goes towards rent, to queer and trans individuals in Lebanon, regardless of nationality or sect or religion. Or this is another thing. There are some groups in Lebanon will be racist, will be shitty, will be exclusionary, and basically not help someone who is Syrian. Or I don't know, it's really frustrating. But again, we try to internalize, and in the kind of like prefigural politics way, how we work, like we integrate our sort of beliefs into the work we do. And yeah, it's just basically trying to develop a kind of community of care, a community of solidarity. And a part of that is, we do need to fundraise, because no matter how much we're there for people, I mean, this is the like really frustrating thing about, this is actually a bit complicated, but there are a lot of like mental health NGOs which are very frustrating because they'll never name capitalism. And in order to name capitalism and to be like, we want to address the violence that capitalism causes, you need cash, because you can't mind over matter your way out of starving. And so it's sort of this like, I remember, and this is a bit of a sort of trigger warning for anyone who is a bit sensitive to the issues of death, suicide, and the like. And so skip maybe like 30 seconds ahead. But a few years ago, there were a lot of cases, several in a row, of people committing suicide publicly because of just how horrible the situation was economically. People who eventually got to the point they couldn't pay for their school's like kids' fees. And like, I remember this one case, I went to the site only a few minutes like after it happened, because there was a kind of spontaneous protest. And the guy, it was really upsetting actually, because he brought a copy of his ID. He brought a copy of this kind of like criminal record to show that he's not a criminal, or he has not done anything, whatever, violate the law, that he's just a guy basically. And I don't remember what his last words were, but the story is that he could not pay for his kid's stuff. He just felt that humiliation and kind of martyred himself as a kind of as the ultimate form of protest. And this is before the war. This is back in 2020 or 2021. And with the war now, it's just all gotten worse. It's horrifying and terrible. And I feel so sorry for all my friends and family and comrades that they have to deal with this, that no one has seriously stopped this fascist, expansionary, just disgusting, with warmonger state. They want war. And literally all it is no one is stopping them. Like, this is Israel let loose. And honestly, this is why I left. I could not handle this. My analysis led me to this point. My analysis, reading and seeing the situation, knew that this is a society, a culture, like an entire militarized culture, and like literally fetishize violence and conquest and bombs. And I don't know, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have seen this video of people like Israelis getting on this boat to go look at Gaza being bombarded. like genocide tourism, literally, and talking about what it will look like once the Palestinians are no longer there, and what they'll do when they move in, and it's to colonize it, and it's fucked. So anyway, what was I saying before I went off on this tangent? So yeah, it's a really cool group. I think it's a really important, I mean, obviously right now the needs are very obvious. And I think there is a necessity to do everything we can. Me doing this episode is my attempt from over here to try and raise more funds. We already have a lot of these mechanisms. We already have been supporting people for years. And now there are just more requests and we need more funds. And I don't know. There's obviously a lot of stuff that I can't do from over here, but I can do this. And you, hopefully, can support. And this, I think, is a really important practice. I mean, the mutual aid that people who support our work kind of engage in, and the solidarity. But I think the reason that we focus on the queer community, not just as queers ourselves, but also because queer people in Lebanon stand in the intersection of so many violent structures, and amplified even more when people like hold Syrian papers, and amplified even more if they've been in the South. And now, displaced and everything, and experienced this recent escalation. And so there are some people, literally no one is taking care of them. They are taking care of themselves. They don't need saving. They just need support. They know what to do. It's just all these systems are so violent and brutal, and there's just very little left for them. There are very little networks of support. And again, the few jobs that people did have, the few abilities, are now, through the economic collapse, just far less work, far less money in general, kind of circulating in the country. Now with war, there's even less work. And so, I don't know. I hope that you'll support us. I love this group so much. I'm so proud of every single one of its members, and for staying together after 4 years, for doing the work we do. And like, it's beautiful, but it's essential, because there is a bit of disagreement or like discussion within the group that like has lasted for. This is one thing I love about the group, is that we all have different ideas. We all have different opinions and different beliefs, but the kind of necessity of the moment, we've always known, trumps any of those disagreements. We will work through it. We will figure it out together. We will discover it through the work itself, because the work and the necessity for it like is just getting more and more. I don't know. I just love everybody in the group individually. I wish them all the best. I hope all of them stay safe. And I hope anybody listening, especially people in the global north, especially queer people who, are interested in supporting queer politics, and people who, are opposed to Zionism and Western imperialism, this is a group that you could definitely help support and sustain itself. And basically with your support, it means that, I don't know, we don't have to spend as much time fundraising and constantly doing up posts and trying to find donors. Oh, also, we should mention, we are very selective with the donors we work with. And that's another thing that NGOs kind of fall into the trap of. And yeah, so like doing this community-supported system helps us also stay kind of accountable to the community and not to some donors, which ultimately comes from some rich asshole or some state or something. And because, we're not beholden to anyone but ourselves and the community around us. And that's the priority. It always was, and it always will be. And I will provide below the Patreon for Queer Mutual Aid Lebanon. Also, I'll provide PayPal information for anyone who wants to make a direct contribution or one-time contribution. And I don't know. I mean, honestly, I am also open if anybody wants to do a fundraiser for us on our behalf, do a little queer party, do a little, Palestine, Lebanon gathering, reading, discussion, wine and cheese, whatever. and take proceeds from that and send to us. A lot of people have done that. And I don't know why I'm mentioning this at the very end. I guess only the most dedicated listeners will be here anyway. So yeah, reach out. I'm available. I don't know if people have access to my email, but I'm sure it's somewhere out there. So yeah, thank you all so much for listening. I hope you're all doing all right. And yeah, I guess I'll see you all next time.